The storm had been circling the plains all evening, rolling in with the weight of 1,000 drums. By nightfall it broke open, thunder shaking the rafters and lightning carving the sky into jagged white scars. Inside the cabin, the storm was louder still. The air stank of sweat and whiskey. The walls quivered with the sound of his voice, harsh, biting, every word flung like a lash. Clara pressed herself against the wooden table, arms folded tight across her middle, though nothing could soften the blow when his hand struck her. "You hear me, woman?" His breath was hot, sour with liquor. His face glistened with rage, deep lines of bitterness carving through the lantern glow. 4 years married and still no son. Not even a babe to cry in the night. What kind of wife can't even... He swung again, fist heavy as a hammer. Clara's head snapped sideways, her vision flooding with sparks. The storm outside roared in agreement, rattling the shutters as if the heavens themselves recoiled at the sound of bone meeting flesh. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. She had learned long ago that sound only fed him, stoked his temper like dry timber to a fire. Blood salted her tongue. She swallowed hard, steadied her breathing. The ache in her jaw spread down her neck, a throb so deep it seemed to pulse with the thunder. "You're a curse," he muttered, pacing, boots grinding dirt into the floorboards. "A useless, barren curse. Men laugh at me in town, you know that? They whisper behind my back. How's a man supposed to hold his head high when he can't even breed a son?" Clara dared to glance at him. The lantern flickered across his scarred face, the lines cut from sun and anger. He had once seemed tall to her, strong, when she'd been a girl of 18 and too eager to believe a man's promises. Now all she saw was the sickness in his eyes, the hunger for control, the kind that gnawed a soul hollow. "I can still," her voice cracked. She tried again. "I can still be a wife to you." His laugh was cruel. "A wife gives sons. A wife gives heirs. You're just..." His hand cut through the air, pointing to the door. "Dead weight." The storm swelled, rattling the window panes. Clara's breath came shallow, each one sharp against her ribs. For years she had borne his words, his fists, his contempt. For years she had prayed in silence, prayed for a child that never came, prayed for deliverance that never arrived. But tonight something different stirred in her chest. It wasn't hope. Hope had been beaten out of her long ago. It was something colder, harder. A decision forming in the marrow of her bones. He slumped into the chair, pouring another drink. The whiskey sloshed over, dripping dark onto the table. His eyes were already heavy with the stupor that followed these rages. "Maybe I ought to trade you off," he muttered. "Get me something worth keeping. Johnson's got stock, cattle, horses. A man like him might take you off my hands. Better than wasting space here." Clara's breath caught. Trade her. Like livestock. Like a broken tool. She turned her face away, hiding the spark in her eyes, hiding the truth that had been dawning on her for weeks. She could not stay. If she stayed, she would not survive another winter, another season of his fists and his scorn. Tonight, the storm was screaming for her. Tonight, she would listen. He drank until his head lolled back. His snores soon drowned beneath the storm. Clara waited motionless, every creak of the floor threatening to betray her. When at last his breathing settled into that heavy, drunken rhythm, she slipped from her chair. The boards groaned, but he did not stir. She pulled on her shawl, nothing more. No boots, no food. She knew if she searched too long, the noise would wake him. Barefoot, she moved to the door. Her hand trembled on the latch. The storm wind pressed against it, urging her forward. The moment the door swung open, rain slapped her face, stinging and cold. She sucked in a breath sharp as glass. And then she ran. The mud sucked at her feet, cold and slick. The wind tore at her shawl. Lightning ripped across the plains, lighting the world white, for an instant showing the endless sweep of grass, the black skeletons of cottonwoods along the creek. She stumbled through it, heart pounding, lungs burning. Behind her, the cabin lay in darkness. For a moment she thought she had made it. Then came the sound that froze her blood, a door slamming, a shout, the shrill whinny of a horse. She dared not look back, but she heard him, boots striking the porch, the ring of spurs, the crack of a whip as he urged his horse into the storm. His lantern swung, a fiery eye against the night, bobbing closer with every breath. Clara pushed harder, legs screaming, bare feet tearing on stones and roots. The world was noise and pain and water. She clawed her way through brush, lightning flashing on barbed branches that ripped her arms. Her shawl caught and tore. The storm was not her enemy. It was her only shield, drowning his shouts, turning the earth to sucking mud. She stumbled upon a narrow track, half hidden in the dark. Somewhere ahead, a light flickered, a small, steady glow. A cabin. Hope, or the cruel trick of stormlight. She had no choice. She staggered toward it, heart clenching at every hoofbeat, thundering closer behind. The cabin was plain, a squat shape against the prairie, but the light inside was steady warm. She reached the porch, gasping, hammering at the door with bloodied fists. "Help," she choked. "Please." The hoofbeats closed in. Lantern light swept the yard. The door opened. A woman stood there, older than Clara, face lined by years but unbowed. Her hair was streaked with gray, tied back neat, and in her hands she held a rifle long as her arm. Behind her, two children peeked wide-eyed from the shadows, a boy and a girl no older than 10. Clara collapsed against the doorway, too breathless for words. The woman's eyes narrowed, taking in Clara's torn clothes, her blood, the desperate terror in her eyes. She didn't ask questions. She stepped onto the porch, cocked the rifle, and leveled it at the man riding into the yard. "Get off my land," she said, her voice calm, carrying even over the storm. Clara's husband pulled his horse up short, lantern swinging, rain dripping off the brim of his hat. His eyes glowed mean in the light. "That's my wife you're harboring," he spat. "She belongs to me." The rifle didn't waver. The woman's stance was steady as stone. "She's not yours to break anymore." For a moment, the world held its breath. The horse shifted, steam rising from its flanks. The storm hissed. Clara clung to the doorway, every nerve waiting for the crack of gunfire. But the man only snarled, spit dark into the mud. "You'll regret this, widow," he growled. "Nobody crosses me and keeps their roof standing." He jerked the reins, wheeled his horse, and galloped back into the storm, his lantern dwindling into darkness. The woman lowered the rifle slowly, eyes still sharp on the horizon. Only when the sound of hoofbeats had faded did she glance back at Clara. "Come inside," she said simply. Clara staggered through the door, every muscle quivering, her body spent. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and stew, warm and safe. She collapsed onto the floorboards, clutching the edge of the rug, sobs tearing loose from her chest, raw and unstoppable. The children stared, but the woman knelt beside Clara, steady hands lifting her gently. "You're safe here," she murmured. "He won't touch you tonight." For the first time in years, Clara believed it. She let the tears come, hot and endless, until at last her body gave out. Darkness closed in, not the cruel kind she had known so long, but the soft kind that meant rest. When she woke, the storm had passed. The world outside was washed clean, glistening under a pale dawn. But Clara knew storms never left without leaving scars. Her husband would be back. He would not forgive. Yet for the first time, she felt the ember inside her glow brighter. For the first time, she wasn't alone. And for the first time, she dared to think of tomorrow. Clara woke to the smell of wood smoke and the quiet clatter of pans. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling above her was low and rough-hewn, beams dark with age. Morning light spilled in through a small square window, softening the edges of the room. She lay on a cot near the hearth, covered in a quilt that smelled faintly of sage and smoke. The memories of the night before rushed back, the storm, the flight through the mud, the widow at the door with the rifle raised. Her throat tightened. She tried to push herself upright, but her body ached as though it had been beaten by the storm itself. Her feet were raw, cut, and swollen from running barefoot across the prairie. Her lip was split, her cheek mottled with bruises. But she was alive, and she was not in his house anymore. The widow noticed her stirring and turned from the hearth. She was sturdy, broad-shouldered, with hair bound tight against her head. Her eyes, though sharp, carried something steady beneath them, like a deep river current. Morning, she said, simply as though Clara had always been there. You want to eat? You've got no strength left in you. Clara tried to speak, but only a croak came out. She nodded instead. The children, two thin shapes in the doorway, watched her with wary curiosity. The boy leaned against the jamb, arms crossed, while the girl clutched a rag doll in one hand. Their eyes were solemn, too old for their years. Clara wondered how much hardship they had already seen. The widow set a bowl of stew in Clara's lap. The scent rose warm and rich, beans, onions, rabbit meat. Clara's stomach clenched with hunger. She hadn't eaten since morning the day before, but shame flared as her hands trembled around the bowl. I can't pay. Don't need paying, the widow said, sitting across from her. Name's Mary. These are my children, Samuel and Ruth. You're welcome here for as long as you've need. Clara blinked at her. Kindness was so foreign it felt like a trick. For years she had been given food, only with scorn, warmth only to be taken away again. She studied Mary's face, searching for the catch, the hidden edge. But Mary's gaze was level, unwavering. Not soft, not pitying, just steady. Clara ate in silence, every bite filling a hollow she'd thought would never be filled. When, at last, the bowl was empty, she whispered, "Thank you." Mary gave a short nod. "You've been hurt bad," she said, "but you're not the first, and you won't be the last." Clara flinched at the words. Shame prickled hot beneath her skin. She wanted to disappear into the quilt. Mary must have seen it, because her tone shifted. "You want to get strong again, you'll need more than rest. Work's the best cure I know. Work and time." That morning, Clara tried to help with chores, though her body protested every step. Mary showed her how to milk the goat, how to fetch water from the well. Samuel watched with suspicion, correcting her when she fumbled. Ruth offered shy smiles, sometimes clutching Clara's hand without warning. Each act, small as it was, reminded Clara how much she had forgotten what it meant to be useful, to be part of something not ruled by fear. Still, guilt gnawed at her. Every sound of hooves on the road, every shout carried on the wind made her flinch. Her husband's threats echoed in her ears. He would come back. He would not forgive. She saw, in Mary's children's eyes, the risk her presence brought. She tried, on the third day, to say she would leave. "You've taken me in when you had no cause," she whispered as they shelled beans by the hearth. "I can't bring danger on you. If he comes—" Mary's hands kept moving, the beans clicking into the bowl. "If he comes, we'll deal with it. You don't understand him." Clara's voice cracked. "He doesn't stop. He'll burn this place. He'll hurt you. He's done worse to me for less." Mary looked up at her then, her gaze hard as iron. "I buried a husband and built this cabin with my own hands. I've fought off wolves, drought, and men who thought they could take what wasn't theirs. Don't tell me what I can't face. You're not leaving, Clara. Not unless you want to." Clara swallowed, words lodging in her throat. Something hot stung her eyes, and she looked away quickly. No one had ever stood for her like that. Not once. Days passed into weeks. Clara's bruises faded, though the scars beneath her skin ran deeper. Mary put her to work in earnest. She learned to mend fences, to chop wood without splitting it wrong, to knead bread and stir the stew pot, while children's laughter mixed with the crackle of fire. The first time she laughed herself, it startled her, sharp, sudden, like something broken had given way inside. Ruth had tugged her skirts and spilled water across the floor, and Clara had laughed until her sides ached. The sound felt foreign but good. Mary watched her progress with a quiet satisfaction, though she pushed Clara harder each day. "You've got to stand straight," she said when Clara tried carrying a pail of water, shoulders slumped. "Don't hunch like you expect the world to strike you. The world don't need the invitation." One evening, Mary set a rifle in Clara's hands. The weight of it startled her. She had never held such a thing. The wood was cool, the iron barrel gleaming faintly in the firelight. Clara's throat tightened. I can't. I don't know." "You'll learn," Mary said. They went outside into the fading dusk. Mary set up a tin can on a post. "Hold it firm against your shoulder." Line up the sights. Breathe steady. Clara trembled. The first shot cracked loud, the recoil slamming into her arm. She flinched, missing the can by yards. Samuel laughed, but Mary's look silenced him. Again, Mary said. The second shot was no better, but Clara kept trying, jaw clenched, hands shaking. At last, on the seventh shot, the kin leapt from the post with a clang. Clara stared, breath caught in her chest, a wild mix of fear and triumph blazing in her. Mary gave the faintest smile. Told you. You'll learn. That night, Clara lay awake on her cot, listening to the wind sigh through the chinks in the cabin walls. For the first time in her life, she felt a spark of strength that was her own. Fragile, yes, but real. But danger was not far behind. Rumors carried on the wind, from travelers who stopped at Mary's well or passed through town. They said a man was asking questions, a rancher with a mean temper, scar down his jaw, riding with fury in his eyes. Some said he offered coin for word of a runaway wife. Others said he promised fire and ruin on whoever harbored her. Clara heard the whispers when she went into town with Mary for flour. Men at the mercantile stopped talking as they entered. One of them, an old shopkeeper with kind eyes, leaned close as he weighed the sack. "You best be careful," he murmured. "That man's poison. He won't stop until he's got what he thinks is his." Clara's hands shook as she carried the flour out. That night she tried again to tell Mary she should leave, and again Mary silenced her. "Running's what he counts on," she said. "Breaks you down until you've got no fight left. But you're stronger than he knows. We'll be ready." The word stayed with Clara. Stronger than he knows. She turned them over in her mind like a stone in her pocket, smoothing the edges with each repetition. Winter edged closer, nights growing longer, the air sharp with frost. Clara's hands grew rough with work, her arms stronger from chopping wood, her aim truer each time Mary sent her to practice. Samuel warmed to her, grudgingly at first, then with the easy teasing of a boy testing how far he could push. Ruth adored her openly, clinging to her skirts, bringing her wildflowers, even as frost killed the last of them. Clara found herself smiling more often, though fear still coiled tight inside her. Each creak of branches in the night, each shadow by the tree-lean set her heart racing. She knew the reckoning would come. She felt it in her bones. And come it did on a night when the moon was thin and the wind sharp. Clara had just settled Ruth back into bed after a bad dream when she heard it, the distant thud of hooves. Her stomach clenched. She moved to the window. Out beyond the fence, torches bobbed in the darkness, 3 of them swaying closer with every breath. Her throat went dry. She whispered Mary's name. The widow was already at the door, rifle in hand, eyes hard. She glanced once at Clara, then at her children sleeping in the loft. Her jaw set. "It's time." Clara's blood roared in her ears. Her hands shook, but she didn't falter. She took up the second rifle, the one Mary had been training her with. Though it felt heavier now, but her grip was steady. She thought of his voice, his fists, his threats. She thought of Mary's words. Stronger than he knows. The torches drew closer, flickering against the night. The sound of men's voices carried on the wind. Clara squared her shoulders, heart hammering, breath sharp as ice. For the first time, she didn't feel like prey waiting for the blow. She felt ready. The fight for her life, and for the life Mary had given her, was about to begin. The night held its breath as the torches drew closer, swaying orange against the black prairie. Each hoofbeat struck the ground like a drum announcing judgment. Clara gripped the rifle until her knuckles burned. Her heart pounded hard enough to shake her ribs, but she stood her ground at Mary's side, eyes fixed on the dark shapes closing in. 3 riders came into view. Her husband led them, his face carved with fury, scar glinting in the torchlight. He sat tall in the saddle, jaw set, eyes fixed on the cabin as though it were prey. 2 men flanked him, hired hands, guns at their hips, cruel grins on their faces, as though the night promised them sport. Mary's voice was low, steady, as she cocked her rifle. "Remember what I told you. Don't flinch. Don't look away. You give a man your fear, and he owns you. You give him steel, he'll think twice." Clara's throat was dry, but she nodded. Her husband reined in at the edge of the yard, torchlight throwing shadows against the fence. His eyes found hers, and for the first time she did not look away. Well, well, he drawled, voice thick with venom. Ran off like a thief in the night. And here you are, hiding under another woman's skirts. His laugh was sharp, cruel. You think this widow can keep you from me? You're mine, Clara. You swore before God, and I'll have what's mine. Mary stepped forward, rifle raised. She swore nothing to chains and fists. You ride any closer, I'll drop you where you sit. The hired men shifted, hands brushing their pistols. Clara's husband sneered. You'd kill for her? A barren wretch who ain't worth the ground she walks on. Mary didn't blink. I'd kill for what's right. The words cut sharper than any blade. Clara felt them lodge in her chest. For years, she had been told she was worth nothing, and here stood a woman who staked her very life on Clara's right to live free. The standoff stretched, torches flickering in the cold wind. Then her husband snapped his fingers. The hired men dismounted, drawing pistols. Burn it, he ordered. Smoke him out. One man stepped toward the barn with his torch. Mary fired. The crack split the night, the bullet whistling past his hand. So close the torch spun from his grip and hissed into the mud. The man cursed, stumbling back. The fight began. Gunfire tore the silence apart. Clara dropped to one knee, just as Mary had taught her, and raised the rifle. Her hands shook, her breath ragged. But she aimed at the second man rushing forward. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, the shot ringing her ears. The man cried out, stumbling, clutching his leg. Smoke and firelight twisted together. Horses reared, screaming. Mary fired again, her shot slamming into the fence post beside Clara's husband, showering him with splinters. He roared, raising his pistol and firing back. The ball tore through the cabin wall inches from Ruth's sleeping place. Clara's blood froze at the thought of the children, but Mary's voice cut through the chaos. Hold steady. The first man charged, swinging his pistol like a club. Clara scrambled back, fumbling to reload. Her fingers slipped on the cartridges, heart hammering as the man closed the distance. Then Mary was there, rifle but cracking across his jaw, sending him sprawling in the mud. She didn't hesitate, swinging back to cover Clara, eyes blazing with a fire that no storm could snuff out. But her husband was inside now. He had dismounted, slipped through the doorway in the chaos. Clara turned, saw the shadow move across the hearthlight. Cold shot through her veins. He was in the cabin. He was with the children. She dropped the rifle and ran. Inside, the air reeked of smoke and gunpowder. Her husband loomed over the cot, pistol gleaming in his hand as Samuel stood frozen, Ruth whimpering behind him. His face twisted in triumph when he saw Clara. There you are, he hissed. Came home, after all. Her body locked, but then something inside her snapped. She would not let him lay a hand on those children. She would not go back to the shackles he called marriage. Every scar on her skin, every bruise on her soul, cried out in one voice. No more. She lunged for the rifle leaning by the door. His pistol swung toward her. The world slowed. The crack of thunder outside, Ruth's sob, Mary's distant shout. Clara lifted the rifle, finger on the trigger. The shot thundered through the cabin. The smell of powder burned her throat. Her husband staggered back, eyes wide with disbelief, hand clutching his chest where blood spread dark across his shirt. He dropped the pistol, gasping like a fish out of water, and crumpled to the floorboards. Clara stood frozen, the rifle shaking in her hands. The children stared, eyes wide, the room thick with smoke and silence. Her husband coughed once, blood bubbling on his lips, then lay still. Her body trembled so violently she thought she might collapse. But then she felt it, the crushing weight that had sat on her shoulders for years, lifting. Not gone, not erased, but lifted. Her breath came in sobs, but they were not sobs of fear. They were of release. Mary burst in, rifle at the ready. She took in the scene at a glance, the body on the floor, Clara standing with the rifle smoking in her hands. Her face softened, Though her eyes stayed sharp, she stepped forward, gently lowering the weapon. "It's done," she said quietly. "He can't hurt you anymore." Clara's knees gave way. Mary caught her, steady arms holding her as she wept. The children clung to Mary's skirts, silent, watching. The night outside had gone still, the hired men gone or crawling off wounded into the dark. The storm that had been building for months, years, was over. Morning broke pale and cold, light spilling across the prairie, gilding the wet grass with silver. The cabin stood, scarred with bullet holes but unburned. Smoke drifted from the chimney. Inside, the body lay wrapped in old canvas, ready for the earth to claim. Clara stood by the hearth, eyes red but clear. She helped Mary patch the holes, mend the fence, tend to the shaken children. Every movement was heavy, but it was hers. No one barked orders. No one struck her for failing. The silence of cruelty had been replaced by the silence of peace. Later, as the sun dipped low, Clara walked out to the hill behind the cabin. The grave was a fresh mound, the dirt raw and red against the grass. She stood there a long time, arms wrapped around herself, listening to the wind. She felt no triumph, only a hollow ache and the faintest flicker of freedom stirring in its place. Mary joined her after a while, standing at her side without speaking. They watched the sky burn gold and purple over the horizon. At last, Clara whispered, "I killed him." Mary's voice was quiet, firm. "No, you ended him. There's a difference. He was killing you every day he drew breath beside you. All you did was stop it." Clara swallowed hard, tears stinging. "I never thought I could." Mary turned to her then, eyes steady, filled with something unshakable. "You could do more than you think. You already have." The words settled in Clara like seeds in thawed earth. She thought of the children, of laughter around the fire, of the strength in her arms from the work Mary gave her. She thought of standing on the porch, rifle raised, no longer prey, but something more. The prairie stretched out before her, endless and wild, full of danger but also of promise. For the first time, she dared to imagine a life not bound by fear. A life where her worth was not measured in children or obedience, but in the strength of her own hands, the choices she made, the people she chose to stand beside. Weeks passed. Winter crept closer. Clara stayed, working the land with Mary and the children. Together they built stronger fences, mended roofs, hunted game. Clara's aim grew sharper, her stride steadier. She laughed more freely, and sometimes in the quiet evenings she told Ruth stories by the fire, tales of wild horses and women who tamed storms. One night, as snow whispered against the shutters, Clara sat with Mary by the fire. The children slept above, their breaths slow and even. Clara stared into the flames, then said softly, "You saved me." Mary shook her head. "No, you saved yourself. I just gave you a place to stand." Clara looked at her, eyes shining. "Then I'll keep standing. With you. With them." Mary's hand, rough and warm, squeezed hers. "That's all I ask." The fire crackled, the wind howled beyond the walls, but inside there was warmth. Inside there was family, not born of blood, but of choice, of survival, of kindness. Clara knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be whispers in town, men who still thought women were property, dangers on the plains that no rifle could always stop. But she also knew this. She was no longer the woman who cowered under fists and cruel words. She was no longer prey. She was Clara, reborn in fire and storm, forged in kindness and courage. And whatever came, she would not bow again. So, what do we take from this tale? Maybe it's this. The frontier was not just a place of dust and danger, it was a forge. It burned away weakness, yes, but it also tempered strength. Two women, both scarred, both hardened, found in each other the courage to stand tall when the world tried to cut them down. Sometimes family isn't given. Sometimes it's made out of blood, out of defiance, out of love that grows in the harshest soil. And if Clara's story speaks to you, then remember it well. Remember that chains can be broken, that fear can be faced, that even the darkest night can break into dawn. The snow did not fall softly that winter. It came down like shards, driven sideways by a merciless wind that scoured the prairie bare. Drift swallowed fences, swallowed paths, swallowed whole cattle herds out east. For Clara and Mary, the storm meant long days chopping wood, long nights keeping the fire alive while the cabin groaned under the weight of ice. But the snow brought more than hardship. It carried whispers. The grave on the hill did not stay secret long. Word spread fast in town that a woman had put a bullet in her husband, that she had found shelter with the widow whose land was always the subject of men's talk. Some spat Clara's name like a curse. Others admired her in silence, though few dared say so aloud. One night, after a day of endless work, Clara sat by the fire, sewing patches onto Samuel's trousers. Mary sharpened a knife across the room, her face unreadable in the firelight. Silence stretched, broken only by the scrape of steel on stone. "They'll come for me," Clara said at last. Mary's eyes flicked up, sharp and steady. "Let 'em come." Clara swallowed, hands trembling on the cloth. "Killing a man, even a cruel one. There's no forgiveness for that." Mary leaned forward, voice low. "You don't ask forgiveness from wolves for killing a wolf. You protect what's yours." But Clara saw the shadow in Mary's eyes, the weight that came from too many winters fighting off the world. The truth was, wolves never came alone, and the one she had shot had left a trail behind him. Debts, allies, grudges. It was 2 weeks later that the trail arrived. Clara was chopping wood by the barn when she saw them crest the ridge. 6 riders, dark against the snow, moving with purpose. Her blood turned cold. She dropped the axe and sprinted to the cabin, flinging the door open so hard it slammed against the wall. "Riders," she gasped. Mary rose at once, rifle in hand. "Children, upstairs." Her voice was iron, no room for argument. Samuel grabbed Ruth's hand, pulling her toward the loft ladder, faces pale. The riders fanned out as they neared the yard, snow crunching under hooves. At their head rode a man with a wide-brimmed black hat, his coat trimmed in wolf fur. His beard was silver at the edges, his posture calm, too calm. The kind of calm that came from a man who'd buried others without losing sleep. He reined in, eyes sweeping the cabin, the barn, the smoke curling from the chimney. Then his gaze fixed on Clara, standing half-hidden behind Mary's shoulder. He smiled, though it didn't touch his eyes. "Ladies," he drawled, voice smooth as polished steel, "I'm told there's been trouble out here." Mary stepped forward, rifle steady. "There's no trouble unless you bring it." The man chuckled. "See, that's the thing. Trouble's already here. My name's Carter. Your husband," he tipped his chin toward Clara, "owed me money. A fair bit. Now, I'm a reasonable man. But when a debt goes unpaid, well, I collect elsewhere. Seems to me his widow might carry what he left behind." Clara's stomach nodded. She had never heard the name Carter, but the certainty in his tone told her it didn't matter. Her husband had left ruin in his wake, and now ruin had come knocking. Mary's voice cut sharp. "You'll get nothing here." Carter's smile widened. "Oh, I'll get what I came for. The question is whether it comes easy or hard." The riders shifted, hands brushing pistols. Clara's breath came fast, fear clawing at her chest. She had faced one man, one monster she had known all too well. But 6 armed strangers, bound by greed and violence, that was a storm of a different kind. Mary raised her rifle. "Best turn around before the snow buries you." For a heartbeat, silence stretched. Then Carter tipped his hat. "Suit yourselves." The guns roared. Clara dove behind the woodpile as bullets splintered the cabin walls. Mary fired back, the crack of her rifle echoing like thunder. One rider fell from his saddle, snow blooming red beneath him. The others wheeled their horses, fanning out, firing wild. Clara's hands shook as she grabbed the spare rifle. Her breath burned in her lungs, but she remembered Mary's words. "Don't flinch. Don't look away." She rose, sighted on a rider circling toward the barn, and squeezed the trigger. The man jerked back, clutching his arm, his horse bolting into the storm. The air was chaos, gunfire, screaming horses, the children's muffled cries from aloft. Mary moved like a force of nature, steady, unshakable, firing, reloading, firing again. Clara tried to match her, though each shot rattled her bones. Then Carter dismounted. He strode through the snow as calmly as if walking into church, pistol in hand, eyes locked on Clara. Bullets flew around him, but he moved with the certainty of a man who believed himself untouchable. "Woman," he called over the din, "your husband died a dog's death. Don't make his mistake. Give me what I came for." Clara rose, rifle trembling in her grip. Her voice cracked, but she forced it out. "He left me nothing. Nothing but scars and a grave." Carter's smile was cold. "Then I'll take those." He raised his pistol, aiming square at her. Time slowed. Clara saw the black hole of the barrel, felt the burn of fear. But then Mary's shot rang out. Carter staggered, the pistol flying from his hand as blood spattered the snow. The riders hesitated, thrown off balance by the sight of their leader wounded. Mary didn't waste the moment. She fired again, another man toppling from his horse. Clara's breath came ragged. But she found her footing, reloading, firing, until the yard rang with gunfire and smoke. At last the remaining riders broke, spurring their horses hard, disappearing into the white wasteland. Carter knelt in the snow, clutching his bleeding shoulder, eyes burning with hatred. Clara stepped forward, rifle aimed steady despite the shaking in her arms. "You think this ends it?" he spat, voice thick with blood. "You kill me, another will come. There's always another. You'll never be free." The words struck deep, because part of her believed them. The world was full of men like him, like her husband, wolves in different coats. But she thought of Ruth's small hand in hers, of Samuel's quiet courage, of Mary's voice saying she was more than she ever believed. She tightened her grip. "Then let 'em come. I'll be ready." For a moment, Carter's eyes flickered, not with fear, but with recognition, as if he saw something in her that unsettled even him. Then Mary's voice cut sharp. "Clara." She turned. Mary stood there, rifle trained, her face unreadable. "He walks away, he brings 10 more back. You know it." The snow swirled, the world hushed. Clara looked at Carter, then at Mary, then back again. Her heart thundered. She had already killed once. Could she do it again? Could she cross that line twice and still find herself on the other side? But then Ruth's cry floated down from aloft, small and trembling. "Mama!" The word pierced her. Mama. She was not just a woman running from chains. She was a mother now, whether by blood or by choice. And mothers did what they must. Clara raised the rifle. Her voice did not shake. "This ends here." The shot cracked across the snow. Carter jerked, fell back, the light in his eyes fading into the storm. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. Clara stood, motionless, rifle smoking in her hands, until Mary touched her shoulder. "It's done." Her breath shuddered out. She felt no triumph, no relief, only the heavy truth that freedom was never given. It was taken, and it came with blood. They buried Carter beside the other grave on the hill, the ground frozen, the work brutal. When it was done, Clara stood over the fresh mound, snow catching in her hair, and whispered a promise. Not to the dead, but to the living. "I'll keep them safe. I'll keep us safe, no matter what comes." Mary's voice was steady beside her. "And I'll stand with you." The storm howled on, endless and merciless. But inside Clara's chest, beneath the grief and the weight, burned something fiercer than fear. Something that no snow could smother. Hope.